Everyone loves a good spy story. Slick secret agents, impossible missions to save the world, and lies told with a charming smile, straight out of a James Bond movie. It's the kind of setup that hooks us with high doses of adrenaline. But imagine taking that tactical espionage aesthetic and dropping it right into the middle of a sitcom about the picture-perfect butter commercial family. The result is one of the most creatively chaotic blends in recent years. That's the kind of brilliance we're talking about today. Spy X Family, a story where an extremely paranoid spy, a deadly assassin with serious social issues, and a slightly unhinged telepathic little girl end up living under the same roof. They have to pretend to be a normal family to prevent a devastating global conflict. The catch? The adults have no idea about each other's secrets, and the child is the only one who knows the truth about everyone. Behind this premise packed with outrageous fight scenes and bizarre misunderstandings, the story overflows with charm and heart. So today on the channel, Spy X Family, a chaotic pile of blatant lies that somehow built the most genuine family in fiction. We are introduced to our perfectly traumatized blonde spy, codenamed Twilight. He spends his days stealing photos of wig-wearing politicians and dumping random girlfriends like yesterday's trash. But the high command decides he needs to infiltrate a prestigious elite school to spy on a man named Donovan Desmond. To pull off this charade, he needs to scramble and put together a fake family in record time. Using the alias Lloyd Forger, he enters a shady-as-hell orphanage where the owner desperately tries to unload his worst merchandise. He ends up adopting Anya, a troublemaking shrimp who doesn't look like much but can somehow solve brutal crosswords out of thin air. What he doesn't realize is that this brat is a telepath.
Looks no older than 4 or 5.
6. I'm 6.
Is this okay with you?
A spy on a mission? So cool.
The moment she reads his mind and discovers his secret agent status, she sticks to him like a burr. Lloyd tries to turn the kid into a genius overnight, but Anya would much rather rot on the couch watching cartoons. When Lloyd decides to go out and act like a functional adult, the girl thinks it's a brilliant idea to play with her fake dad's radio transmitter, ending up kidnapped by a bunch of generic suits. Lloyd rushes back, realizes the mess he's in, and unleashes his inner John Wick. He invades the enemy base using flower traps worthy of a Home Alone comedy, wrecks everyone's face, and scares off the mob boss by dropping subtle threats about the guy's own daughter.
That Twilight? Don't shoot! It'll blow!
Turn around and you're dead.
They survive. The girl cheats her way through the entrance exam by raiding the brains of every other idiot in the room, and barely passes. But peace is an illusion. The acceptance letter requires the presence of both parents, forcing our protagonist into a desperate hunt for a wife.
But there is no mama.
Desperate to find a female lead for the interview, Lloyd tries to dress his coworker as a woman, resulting in a bargain bin drag queen that would traumatize anyone's retinas. Meanwhile, we meet Yor, a quiet civil servant constantly mocked by her mean girl colleagues for being single. What these haters don't know is that at night, she slips into a skin-tight black outfit and spends her dawns driving sharpened stilettos deep into corrupt politicians until they stop breathing.
Excuse me. Terribly sorry for the interruption.
Needing a rental partner to dodge the suspicions of her obsessed younger brother, Yor bumps into Lloyd at a tailor shop. Anya reads the woman's mind, discovers her bloody profession, and gets absolutely hyped at the idea of having 2 dangerous parents. Manipulating the situation to hook the 2 idiots up, they strike a simple deal, a mutual exchange of favors. On the night of a big party, the spy arrives late because he was busy beating the life out of dozens of smugglers on the way. He bursts into the ballroom bleeding from every pore, fakes a story about being a psychiatrist, and introduces himself as her husband. When a socialite tries to humiliate Yor by throwing a hot tray at her, the professional assassin catches the dish mid-air, using nothing but her legs.
Hot gratin out of the oven. Whoops, I seem to have tripped on something.
They bail on the event, but the remaining smugglers show up to settle the score. Lloyd starts knocking thugs out, claiming it's aggressive shock therapy. Yor finds the carnage poetic and decides to break a few bones to help with the rehab. As machine guns provide the background symphony, Lloyd pulls the pin on a fragmentation grenade, blows the enemies sky high in a pyrotechnic display, and uses the grenade pin to propose to this beautiful psychopath.
Yor, even in sickness, let's do it together.
The assassin for hire moves her bags into the hypocritical spy's home. In their first moment of intimacy, she almost lets her heavy crate of piercing toys slip. Lloyd decides to start the first mock interview at home, but within 5 minutes, he realizes he's adopted a brat who doesn't know her own zip code and married a woman whose solution to any inconvenience is first-degree murder. Noticing his new family has less charm than a bowl of dirt, the protagonist drags them out in a ridiculous attempt to inject some high society culture into their veins. The nightmare begins at an opera where the kid snores like a chainsaw, moves to a museum where Yuri spends minutes staring deeply at a guillotine, and ends in the chaos of a political rally where Anya's brain nearly fries from sucking in the dark, grimy thoughts of the crowd.
Also an excellent mother to my daughter.
Yes, well, those are all things I'd hope a woman.
As Lloyd sits on a bench wondering how he'll justify this failure to his boss, Yuri suggests a walk in the park to save his sanity. Right then, a pathetic thief snatches an old lady's purse. Yuri tries to catch the human trash but loses the trail, forcing the spy to hunt the bastard through the crowd. Anya senses the thief's fear, pushes her consciousness through the turmoil, and gets a nosebleed just to pinpoint the skinny guy's exact location. Lloyd drops on the guy like a hawk, humiliates him in public, and gets the money back. The old lady melts, calling the three of them a warm, lovely family. With their hearts softened like cheap butter, the trio heads home, and the spy finally feels a disgusting spark of hope that this twisted theater might actually work. The fake happy family sets foot in the elite school, and the paranoid spy immediately notices the teachers are lurking in every corner watching their every move. The head instructor, Henry Henderson, is about to have a stroke from sheer disgust at the unrefined masses until he sees our favorite scammers venerating a stone statue with pure elegance. In the middle of the bourgeois fashion show, a student falls into a gutter. Lloyd decides to ruin his pants to fish the blubbering brat out, nearly making Henderson faint from horror. But the family pulls new clothes out of thin air, humiliating the old man with their psychopathic levels of organization. Suddenly, the school farm loses control and the entire zoo decides to trample the candidates. While the herd mows down socialites, Yuri decides she doesn't have time for a mad cow situation and paralyzes the leader by hitting its pressure points. Anya pets the traumatized cattle, and Henderson has an elegance collapse in the middle of the street, passing them to the next phase, mostly because they had a third change of clothes hidden up their sleeves.
We anticipated this and prepared another change of clothes.
During the oral interview, the spy bugs the walls just to sweat through his suit before entering. The interrogation turns into a horror show when a bald professor, who definitely lost custody of his own kid for being a total loser, starts harassing Anya and making her cry on purpose to test their limits. Lloyd tries to suppress his sociopathic instincts, fakes seeing a pest, and smashes a thick wooden table with his bare hands. They tell the school to shove it and walk out, leaving Henderson so impressed by their character that he lands a perfect right hook on the bald idiot's face. Back home, the mood is heavier than a Sunday night. The spy drowns his sorrows in a pity toast, perfectly crowned by the family photo breaking on the floor, just to let them know the universe hates them.
Family's bright future.
The spy agency is celebrating the victory with expensive coffee, while our fake family arrives at the school only to get a reality check. The brat's name isn't on the board, but before a collective suicide under the school sign, the king of elegance emerges from the shadows with a secret waiting list, saying that if any daddy's boy kicks the bucket, the mutant gets the slot. Yuri practically salivates at the thought of sticking a knife in an innocent throat to speed up the process, but she holds back. Miraculously, a spot opens up 3 days later. To celebrate, the scruffy informant breaks into the house with booze, gets wasted, and plants stupid ideas in the kid's head. Anya wants to play damsel in distress in a castle, and Lloyd, who has plenty of government slush fund money to burn, rents an entire theme park and summons the whole agency of assassins and spies to play hide and seek. Lethal professionals who should be saving the world are now acting as low-rent henchmen in a depressing children's play. The scruffy guy runs a ridiculous quiz to test the spy's knowledge of his own adoption, but the protagonist gets the girl's favorite drink wrong and is forced to swallow his pride while wearing a cringy Bondman costume.
She wants Bondman spy gear. Well, Anya,
I want some water because I'm thirsty.
you got it wrong.
He survives a ball pit from hell, shoots rubber bullets at others, and scales a suspension tower like a well-trained primate. At the top, he faces his fake wife, who has turned into Witch Yorticia, fueled by pitchers of wine. Yor lunges at him, ready to send her husband to the grave, but her high heel snaps and she passes out cold on the floor. Lloyd beats the fake villain in disgust, plays hero for the delusional mutant under expensive fireworks, and the next day shames the nation by sending the bill for this megalomaniac fever dream to his redhead boss's desk. Our plastic family goes to pick up the brat's uniform, where the gossipy seamstress warns them that rich kids are disappearing off the streets, nearly making the mutant fill her boots with pure fear. Using work as an excuse, the spy sneaks off to meet his stressed-out boss in a filthy alley. She throws flyers in his face, screaming about the financial black hole he's ripped in the agency's budget. She rubs the rules in Lloyd's nose. The girl needs to devour books to earn 8 Stella stars and become the elite, but if she gets 8 nitrous bolts for being a moron, she's out on the street. Meanwhile, Yuri tries to act like a functional mother and takes the lab rat to the market. Obviously, a bunch of delinquent human trash tries to snatch the kid, thinking they can profit off a dumb nanny. The assassin drops diplomacy instantly, lifts a grocery bag, and crushes a massive pumpkin with her bare hands like it's a kidnapper's skull, making the thugs vomit in terror and run.
It'll make your head spin!
I suggest you leave right now!
Mama's so cool.
Suffering from guilt and a mom complex, she decides the only viable solution is to teach lethal martial arts to a 6-year-old. On the first day in bourgeois hell, Lloyd reads the reports, realizes his daughter's intelligence is non-existent, and activates the emergency tactic, have her stick to the target's arrogant son like a parasitic tick. Anya crosses paths with the spoiled brat Damien and tries to play nice, but reading the inflated, arrogant mind of the mini trash, she lets out a crooked, sadistic smirk that would traumatize anyone. The rich kid with the shitty bangs spends the next few hours humiliating her until her peace evaporates. Anya ignores the teachers, remembers her adoptive mom's killer training, and lands a juicy cross punch right in the pampered kid's face, sending him straight to the dumpster.
I stuck out my hand and he just ran into it. Don't lie. No one would ever believe that.
The elegant old man is ready to pull the expulsion trigger, but Anya squeezes out fake tears, claiming she did it all to protect her useless friend. The cheap theater saves her neck and reduces the ban to a single demerit. At the official ceremony, the spy looks at the papers, sees his whole plan in the gutter, and the class photo perfectly reflects the hollow face of a man who has given up on humanity. Lloyd decides that if Plan A went down the drain, Plan B is still on life support, requiring the pocket mutant to apologize to the arrogant mini-trash. At the academy, the brat tries to make amends, but the wealthy Becky acts like a guard dog and drags the girl away from the clutches of forgiveness. Realizing the fate of the world depends on a literal illiterate's apology, our spy goes into full psycho-stalker mode. He infiltrates the school disguised as a janitor, plays with light reflections to get her attention, prunes bushes into the word sorry, and even frauds the textbooks and the lunch ketchup to plant subliminal messages in her empty mind. Seeing that Becky is the parasite blocking his success, Lloyd uses the school's PA system to eject the girl from the area. Anya finally stands face to face with the dictator in the making, but hearing the rotten thoughts of his goons, she starts crying rivers of forced tears, begging for mercy. The wet theater hits Damien right in the feels, activating a repressed tsundere fetish that turns his face the color of a tomato. Panicking because he's falling for the girl who wrecked his face yesterday, the boy runs away screaming he'll never forgive her, making Lloyd collapse on the floor as his scheme falls apart.
Rather die than let you win! I will never forgive you!
How could this happen?
At home, the spy resorts to forcing intelligence into a brick wall, threatening to ban her cartoons if she doesn't solve math problems. The lab rat tries to suck the assassin mom's intellect via telepathy, but the woman's macabre brain can only make analogies involving slicing corpses into tiny pieces. Frustrated, the brat locks her bedroom door. Lloyd realizes acting like a drill sergeant isn't working and decides to soften up, only to find the girl passed out drooling over her books, proving that even a moron will try her best not to disappoint her plastic dad. Meanwhile, in some random alley, Yuri's brother finds out through gossip that his sister got married, swallowing the biggest fraternal betrayal in history.
What'd you say? My sister got married.
Proving she has the IQ of a wilted lettuce, the brat fails miserably in math class, announcing the wrong answer to the world, while her spy father gets the news that the secret police are hunting informants like rats. And guess who the secret police's torturer-in-chief is? Exactly, Yor's younger brother Yuri, a maniac with a sister complex who smashes suspects' faces into ashtrays while unloading sickening love for his blood relative. When the assassin remembers she forgot to tell her obsessed family about her own marriage, the circus catches fire. Yuri announces an immediate visit, and the spy transforms the apartment into a romantic movie set overflowing with tiny hearts to prove they are a real couple. The brother bangs on the door carrying massive roses and a suffocating jealousy, ready to gun down any loser who touches his sister. When asked why the secret, Yor uses the flawless excuse that she just forgot she forgot, and the brother's love-melted brain swallows that idiotic justification as gospel truth. Attempting to unmask Lloyd with cheap tactics, Yuri gets trashed on expensive wine and starts making up fake stories about overseas trips. The problem is, the loser pulls his script from an outdated clandestine manual. The spy puts 2 and 2 together in half a second and realizes his disgusting brother-in-law is his biggest government enemy. But the horror show peaks when Yuri starts crying, remembering how Yor used to come home drenched in blood just to buy him books, thinking she just worked really hard at a regular office. Blinded by jealousy, the maniac suddenly slams the table and demands the two exchange fluids right then and there to prove their marital love. Lloyd, the master of deception who has tongued countless informants for the mission, doesn't blink and moves in for the lip lock on his lethal wife. Panicking at the thought of actual intimate contact, the assassin chugs an entire bottle of alcohol and pounces on the fake dad like a wild animal in heat. Seeing his sister about to have her lips stolen, Yuri dives through the air to stop the sacrilege, but ends up eating a colossal slap to the face that sends him to the other side of the hemisphere, drowning the poor guy in his own blood. The drunk idiot interprets the near decapitation as ultimate proof of her love for her husband and leaves completely humiliated, leaving the spy to sweep his own house at dawn searching for bugs planted by his sadistic brother-in-law. The next morning, Lloyd enters deep paranoia mode, fully aware he's sleeping with a direct relative of the secret police. Trusting absolutely no one in the house, he pretends to brush dirt off his wife's neck and skillfully plants a tracker on her. To test her loyalty, he drags his scruffy informant along, dresses in cheap government agent costumes, and corners the assassin in a filthy alley. He accuses his wife of sending encrypted government codes in a random letter, ignoring the pathetic detail that the paper was just a formal request for hemorrhoid cream from her loser boss. When the scruffy partner tries to lay hands on the woman, Yor discards all diplomacy and slams the poor guy into the asphalt, threatening to slaughter the fake agents if they dare touch her precious pretend husband. Seeing that the woman doesn't share state secrets with her deranged brother and is incredibly loyal to the family charade, Lloyd dismantles the act on the spot, and then gets a lecture from his bruised colleague for doubting the bloody innocent woman. Beaten by his own guilty conscience, the protagonist bumps into his wife on the way home, removes the bug like a cheap magician, and drops a romantic speech asking her to stay herself. Manipulating her feelings to erase his tracks of guilt, they buy a reconciliation cake and rush home to feed the horned brat who reads everyone's thoughts and loves watching the world burn. At 6 a.m., the Lord of Geriatric Elegance, Henderson, is sipping his refined tea while philosophizing happily about punishing children with tonitrous bolts. But the old man's peace is shattered when he catches the telepath brat and the arrogant heir throwing hands as soon as the sun rises. Shallow hallway gossip says a dodgeball tournament will grant a coveted Stella star to the MVP. Anya smells a chance to please her fake dad and summons her professional killer mom for intensive training, learning a secret lethal technique that defies all laws of physics and common sense.
Channeling all of your strength into your shoulder. Boom! Okay, now you try it.
On game day, the entire class faces the final boss, Bill Watkins, a muscle-bound fridge of a human with a bodybuilder's voice who miraculously passes for an elementary student. The mini gorilla starts exterminating everyone on the court with hits that break the sound barrier, decimating the team with brute force until only the pink-haired telepath and the mini rich brat are left. When the brute focuses on the horned shrimp, she simply reads the meathead's mind and dodges everything with the agility of a cockroach escaping a slipper. But since her motor skills are a tragic joke, she trips over her own uselessness. The giant launches a meteor to vaporize the girl, but the young Lord Damien jumps in front in a dramatic sacrifice, getting swallowed by the ball and losing his chance to be the hero. Bleeding from the eyes to avenge the boy who just got flattened, Anya prepares the assassin move she learned at home. She takes the perfect stance, gathers the energy of the universe, and throws the ball with the force of a choked-up sneeze. The ball bounces pathetically on the floor. The giant catches it with ease and eliminates her instantly.
Huh?
Thinking he's secured the dream, Stella, the giant kid, gets a reality check when the elegant old man crushes his dreams, informing him that PE classes don't grant medals, and then threatens a punishment because the kid kept shouting about killing his classmates. The master spy is on the verge of a nervous breakdown after discovering his fake daughter failed every possible test and is spending all her time watching cartoons. Frustrated by that well of stupidity, he tries to force knowledge into her, but the brat is already planning to cheat by reading the minds of the smart kids. When Lloyd considers hacking the school system to forge her records before backing off due to mission ethics, the girl senses his disappointment and falls into a deep depression. Desperate, the protagonist tries to push arts, music, and sports, but the girl has the talent of a moldy potato. The only salvation is community service at a hospital to beg for a Stella star through good deeds. Once there, the shrimp destroys flower vases at light speed and uses the library to slack off reading manga, getting kicked out by a nurse who has zero patience for incompetent charity. Just as disappointment hits the whole family, a patient sinks into the rehab pool. Since every adult there suffers from collective blindness, no one notices the boy swallowing water, but Anya catches the telepathic despair. Trying to play the heroic lifeguard, she jumps in only to remember she can't swim either, requiring the fake dad to dive in to prevent the two useless ones from becoming fish food. Miraculously, this earns the girl her first Stella. With her ego hitting the ceiling and demanding to be called Starlight Anya, she arrives at school thinking subjects will be kissing her feet. Instead, she gets a reality check when classmates spread rumors that she bought the award. She's defended only by the arrogant heir who swallows his pride of losing to a functional illiterate just to maintain the school's honor. Using her high status, the telepath blackmails her parents for a dog, while the spy imagines a tactical military beast and the assassin stepmom envisions a sadistic hound tearing out throats. In a filthy underground base, terrorists plan to use bomb dogs, where a giant fluffy animal has a magical vision of this exact family of lunatics. The world's most wanted spy is working so much overtime playing nanny to armed thugs that he almost forgot to maintain his display family facade. Arriving home exhausted, he hears the venomous neighbors gossiping in the hallway that his constant lateness is a sign of being a masked cuckold or cheap cheating. Panicking that his cover will be chewed up by old gossips, the protagonist drags his bloody wife and tiny telepath on a superficial trip to the aquarium, just to prove he's the most devoted family man on the block. But his international agency tosses labor rights into the trash and shoves another insane mission on him the second he steps onto the train. The new target: recover an intel capsule stuffed down the throat of a penguin at the aquarium. The logistical nightmare? The place has 200 identical penguins, and Lloyd has no idea how he's going to shove his hand into all those birds' gullets without getting arrested. Stepping in as a useful assistant, Anya scans the birds' minds and finds the one that's choking and struggling to digest the capsule. With the target marked, the spy dons a rookie employee jumpsuit, invades the enclosure, and stuffs the throats of all 200 birds in a frenetic fish-tossing choreography, isolating the prize bird in the back. Before he can celebrate, a fake terrorist with a dollar store biologist badge tries to steal the goods at gunpoint. Lloyd demoralizes the poor guy with a surgical bucket toss that sends him running for his life. Trying to speed up the enemy's humiliation, the brat follows the fleeing criminal, grabs his coat in the main hallway, and screams she's being kidnapped. The assassin's fake mom alarm triggers, and Yuri launches the bastard into the aquarium ceiling with an orbital kick, ending the terror plot with unbridled violence.
Don't touch my daughter!
To finally shut the nosy neighbors up, Lloyd returns home parading a grotesque penguin plushie, flaunting his "good fake dad" trophy. The piece lasts 5 minutes until the entitled telepath tries to invade the spy's forbidden room, catching a scary scolding that triggers a demonic crying fit, and threats to run away. With no choice but to keep the theater alive, the assassin-spy duo gives in to the blackmail, grabbing ridiculous plushies on the sidewalk and pretending to be secret agents to massage the kid's broken ego, buying cheap peanuts to try and save whatever's left of their mental health for the day. A gang of backyard terrorists decides the best way to trigger a world war is by turning dogs into furry missiles. Meanwhile, our favorite dysfunctional family tries to buy a pet to reward the telepathic brat, but Lloyd fakes a case of explosive diarrhea just so he can slip away and handle national security matters. He goes as far as masking his own face with the terrorist leader's likeness, just to make a lackey cry and confess the entire plot to blow up the minister. Far from the danger, Yuri and Anya visit an adoption fair where the pink-haired midget stares down a giant white dog and reads its mind. Discovering the beast is practically a four-legged psychic, realizing her adoptive mother has the cognitive capacity of a doorknob, Anya decides to infiltrate the terrorist's base completely solo. Naturally, her stealth tactics last exactly 5 seconds before she's cornered by the incel extremist leader. Fortunately, the canine white cloud leaps into action to protect the girl. Meanwhile, Yor suffers an anxiety spike in the street, reaching the absurdly schizophrenic conclusion that her daughter was kidnapped to be forced into a child marriage with some creep. Anya hops on the prophetic pooch and flees through the streets in a chaotic rodeo, only to be surrounded by the villains in an alleyway. Just as a henchman prepares to dispatch the brat, Yor descends from the heavens like a biblical plague, ready to dismember anyone trying to take her daughter to the altar.
No, little Anya is too young to get married!
The killing machine disguised as a housewife growls at the terrorist dog with such raw fury that the beast decides life isn't worth it and flees with its tail between its legs. The villainous leader books it, and Anya drops the world's lamest excuse, claiming Lloyd needs toilet paper, just to ditch Yor again and prevent the apocalyptic future she just gleaned from the dog's mind. While the spy's handler educates spoiled university students by kicking them in the face with stiletto heels to teach them about the real pains of war, Anya and the dog arrive at the trap's location. The only problem is that genetics didn't favor the girl's intellect. She can't even tell time on a public clock, lacking the guts to touch the explosive wires because real life isn't like her idolized cartoons. The brat squeezes a tube of ketchup on the door to leave a sinister warning, praying the spy isn't stupid enough to ignore her tomato cave art. Lloyd miraculously deciphers the red goo and survives a free bloodbath. Determined to end the party, he disguises himself as the 60-year-old minister and lures the terrorist into a high-speed chase. The villain tosses a grenade, thinking he's won, but Lloyd shatters the old man illusion by pulling off Olympic-level parkour over the walls. He runs straight into a grimy alley, where he corners the bomb dog and aims his weapon, ready to send the beast to the great beyond. Without a shred of hesitation, the spy shoots the bomb off the dog with a surgical shot, tosses the armored weight into the river, and dumps the animal in a trash bin like a container of spoiled leftovers. Completing the unintentional humiliation combo, Yor intercepts the leader's getaway car by literally kicking the sports vehicle off the road, turning the madman into a human paperweight with terrifying ease. When the window dressing family finally bumps into each other on the street, the tiny telepath realizes the secret agency is going to confiscate her prophetic mount. She plays the dirtiest blackmail card possible, threatening to drop out of school if she can't keep the beast. Lloyd's boss immediately folds to the child's psychological warfare.
This has nothing to do with
Anya,
school.
please don't cry.
You need to be
yours.
But ma'am.
So it's okay.
And the next day, the giant white cloud is delivered to their apartment. Ready to use the animal as her social ladder, Anya tries to humiliate the snotty rich kid in class by rubbing the new pet in his face, but her ego takes a grotesque tumble when the boy asks for the dog's name and she chokes, blurting out that it's literally dog. To save what's left of the girl's non-existent dignity, Lloyd drags everyone to the park. The white-furred monster consolidates total dominance by scaring off a pathetic bulldog and recovering Anya's dirty glove, finally earning the grand title of Bond.
Their doggy's forever name is Bond.
Like Bond from Bond.
Back at the fancy apartment, the newly christened canine drops a terrifying load on the litter box lid, and the family of liars shares a sweet, sickly sweet nap on the rug, magically ignoring the fact that last night they nearly caused an international bloodbath. The master spy notices his fake wife arriving late with mutilated, fully bandaged hands, fearing she's finally botched an assassination mission. But the truth is much more humiliating. Yuri was secretly begging her co-workers to teach her the art of not poisoning her own family, since her last breakfast sent Lloyd to the porcelain throne for an entire day. While Yuri obliterates a cutting board in someone else's kitchen, her brother Yuri appears as a voluntary guinea pig and official poison tester. She serves a primordial soup of death containing bones and a terrifying fish head. The secret police sadist swallows the hot broth with a manic smile, screaming about how delicious it is while vomiting his guts onto the floor in a pathetic display. After much sweat and desperation, Yuri magically manages to replicate a stew from her childhood, earning her disturbed brother's approval. Back at the apartment, Lloyd and the telepathic midget mentally prepare for certain death when Yuri serves dinner. To everyone's shock, the food goes down smooth and delicious, making the assassin weep with joy for not having killed her fake husband. Hyped up, she shoves one of her original desserts down their throats and both instantly collapse, foaming at the mouth.
Gimme!
Parallel to this culinary chaos, the scruffy beta informant cries his eyes out, asking the spy for help to win over a shop clerk. Lloyd builds a bizarre flirting flowchart and literally disguises himself as the man's dream woman for practice. Predictably, Frankie stammers in front of the real girl and gets shot down hard, ending the night drowning his sorrows at a bar with Lloyd picking up the tab out of pure pity. The tiny telepath carries a photo of her giant fluffy dog in a desperate attempt to rub the beast in the snotty rich kid's face to gain social points. The plan crumbles when her wealthy bestie intercepts the photo and becomes thirstier for Anya's fake dad than a desert traveler, stealing Lloyd's photo for herself like a crazed maniac. In a bizarre art class taught by a professor obsessed with elegance, the students have to craft animals out of paper, while the wealthy bestie tries to break the rules by sculpting a statue of Lloyd, claiming he is a higher evolutionary being. Anya produces a pile of recyclable trash that burns the eyes. The rich kid, Damien, begins building a majestic griffin, and Anya immediately glues herself to him, offering unwanted help. She sticks grotesque jet nozzles onto the classical model, causing the boy to snap and humiliate her until she cries dramatically. The Council of Elite Trustees passes through the halls inspecting the class's results. Instead of gagging at Damien's ruined sculpture, the suits have a collective hallucination and interpret the heap of crumpled paper as a profound metaphor for post-war trauma, awarding the boy first place in an absolutely ridiculous turn of events. Motivated and needy, the kid decides to melt his brain studying to please his neglectful father. Meanwhile, Lloyd's tyrant boss flaunts her superiority over the secret police by cycling through disguises, eventually switching to a blonde wig in a pool locker room. She meets her best agent in an alley to exchange state secrets, but her badass aura is annihilated because she's walked all day with a price tag dangling from her coat, and Lloyd is too terrified to tell her. The spy simply reports with disgust that their secret weapon managed the feat of jumping rope 5 times without falling on her face. The brutal panic of exams grips the elite school, with the very real threat that failing grades will earn the cursed Tonitrus bolts. The mocking telepath plans to use her pirate radio brain to suck the answers out of the snotty rich kid, but she suffers a total meltdown upon discovering that the exams fall exactly on the day of the new moon. During this phenomenon, her powers simply shut off, and she has to deal with the worst human tragedy imaginable: actually having to study. The secret police sadist is summoned to the apartment to try and save the midget from absolute failure. The sycophantic brother nearly suffers a stroke dealing with the girl's stupidity, but is quickly manipulated by his sister's cheesy compliments and decides to endure the torture. By the end of the day, he leaves frustrated by his own lack of life knowledge, swallowing Yuri's radioactive snacks and vomiting happily all the way home. On exam day, the master spy suffers an acute anxiety crisis and infiltrates the school disguised as a teacher, intending to rig his daughter's test scores. In the hallway, he bumps into Daybreak, a self-proclaimed rival spy so miserably incompetent he breaks a window just to avoid picking a lock, and who writes his mission orders on his own hand like a primary schooler cheating on a math test.
I saw 2 student numbers. Seems he's altering some test scores.
Daybreak brutally sabotages the Desmond brothers' answer sheets to ensure they taste failure. The master spy rolls his eyes, fixes the amateur idiot's mess, and finally checks his daughter's sheet. Days later, the grades are posted, and Damien nabs a Stella Star for his absurd effort. Anya drags her butt in at a glorious 213th place, sporting a disgusting smile of superiority for scraping the bottom of the barrel and passing without a single punishment. The girl rests on her laurels of mediocrity while Lloyd realizes he's going to have to enslave the child to her notebooks, and the trash spy Daybreak is comfortably fired from his own existence. George, a walking failure, overhears that his father's pharmaceutical company will be violently swallowed by the Desmond Group. A month later, this pit of depression decides the perfect revenge against the rich kid Damien is to plant a cigarette butt on him and throw himself into the trash, faking a cowardly injury like a low-tier pro soccer player. Anya uses her clandestine gifts to read this loser's empty mind and completely spoils his cheap show. With no way out, George ditches his masculinity and embraces victimhood, whining that he's about to become an international hobo. The moocher starts sucking the pity out of the entire class, gulping down apple juice, palming a plate of luxury caviar, and even feeling the forbidden pleasure of wearing his classmate's elite star on his own sweaty chest. The pathetic students join in a cringy, dramatic farewell choir at sunset, showering him with gifts. However, karma strikes the next day when the boy returns to school with his tail between his legs, receiving the news from his father that the Desmonds actually saved the bankrupt company, turning his tragedy into a monumental farce. At the same time, the psychopath mother enters a neurotic spiral, assuming the midget forgot her gym uniform. Discarding all logic, Yor activates Spider-Man instincts, crawls vertically up the academy walls, traumatizes the brain of a random gossip, and causes a scandalous pileup among the school's animals just by stepping on a pig's tail. Lloyd observes the woman plummeting through the campus like a psychiatric ward escapee. Yor manages to find Anya, but she says she didn't have PE class that day, leaving Yor devastated. Foreseeing the worst for the maternal puppet's mental integrity, our spy pulls out his wallet and drags the lonely lady to lunch, drowning world diplomatic problems with free hot food. The elite faculty demands a basic project investigating the family breadwinner, so the half-pint telepath considers snooping on her glorious mama. The housewife, who slices bodies in her spare time, promptly imagines the two of them spraying warm red liquids directly into their targets' faces without mercy, trying to convince Anya it's just a tomato festival. Immediately terrified by such gratuitous mental decapitation, Anya plays it safe and bets on the medical life of the lying psychologist. On the morning of the crime, Lloyd dresses her like a detective from a flopped TV series and marches her to the millionaire's hospital, spewing heroic lectures about war trauma. In the grimy reality of his mind, he's just collecting wealthy targets and handling federal secrets. Gossiping at light speed, the child captures the state's entire betrayal in her notebook. Bored by the bureaucracy, Anya ruffles through her father's sacred shelves, triggers the emergency escape route, and squeezes her thighs into a muddy pit, getting stuck under a massive metal pipe. Her crude grunts end up terrifying half a dozen scientists who swear they felt satanic specters in the ventilation.
I'm in big trouble! I need to hurry back!
When Lloyd returns in a panic, he finds the girl rubbing stupid sand on a test model. With thick-lipped paranoia flowing, the psychopath concludes his manufactured offspring is suffering from severe degenerative stress. After scraping a 10 inches by forcing spy fallacies into her school report, the girl crafts criminal secret riddles a la Spy Wars and scatters the crappy papers to the four winds. Everyone ignores the stench, except for one thirsty man. The lonely informant who hasn't hugged a female since puberty reads the poorly cooked note, thinks a goddess of beauty wants to get with him, dons his extravagant suit, and dies inside holding a useless bouquet of flowers. On the other side of town, the pink brat doesn't even remember the pathetic code and buries her face in her pillow, snoring loudly while wasting all the romantic illusions you'll never live either. As if the bureaucratic spy hell wasn't enough, the walking ice block Fiona appears, harboring an uncontrollable obsessive love for the disguised spy and determined to sabotage the current rent-a-wife position. Using the lame excuse of returning a grimy magnifying glass, the Silver Girl penetrates the armored house to massacre the insecurities of the murderous lady of the house, throwing out hints that Lloyd's complaints at the water cooler are anything but scarce. However, the ambush goes down the drain when the Forger Circus walks through the front door, sporting the telekinetic girl and her prophetic beast. The midget quickly sniffs out the frozen opportunist's white matter and crashes headfirst into her sick dream of kicking Yor out of the family, tethering Lloyd in legitimate matrimony and grinding reducing Anya's sacred cartoon days into dust by turning the girl into an academic machine running on burnt oil. Terrified of the extinction of her natural right to mental slacking, Anya intentionally spills her creamy brown liquid all over the coffee table. Acting with the divine cannibalistic urgency of a protective lioness, Yor maternally scrubs the disaster until everything shines, earning a suffocating hug from the pink brat who crowns her with the magnanimous title of incomparable queen of us all. Choking on this impenetrable melodramatic sludge of cheap maternal affection, the pale loser flees weeping onto the asphalt under a heavy late-afternoon downpour to protect her own false superiority. The drama crumbles in a stupid epilogue when the mafia dog goes into convulsions of pure poisonous jealousy over the favorite chubby penguin, disemboweling the soft monster with exposed fangs throughout the night. Anya shrieks for a swift execution, demanding the fake psychiatrist stitch the mutilated flesh back together until the bird resurfaces in a grotesquely unforgettable patchwork. In a pure display of surrender, the canine wags his tail in fear and enters the forbidden zone, stuffing peeled peanuts into his maw to bribe for the kind of peace mediocre politicians could only dream of possessing. In the basement of a criminal tennis tournament, the repressed albino spy decides the best way to usurp the wife role from our assassin is by flaunting her ball-whacking skills. The mission's target is a tacky million-dalk painting that hides a dossier capable of starting World War III, but Fiona really just wants Lloyd to carry her over the threshold as his doubles partner for life. Adopting the identities of husband and wife, they step onto the court to obliterate two retired former champions, with Lloyd serving the ball with such aggression that the poor saps don't even see the color of their own humiliation. To prove she's the alpha female of the government relationship, the silver-haired girl enters an exhibitionist frenzy and slaughters the opponent's solo.
In your
At the playground, the professional assassin stews in her own poison of insecurity, wondering if the platinum blonde is stealing her fictional husband, but the telepathic midget lies through her teeth to soothe her adoptive mother's fried nerves. Returning to the elite sport, the spy duo is faced with two meatheads pumped full of experimental steroids, but Fiona beats the hulking bruisers without mercy, channeling all her intimate frustration into violent racket swings. As they advance to the final against the event owner's spoiled kids, the dynamic duo is locked in a gas-filled room to atrophy their lungs. Refusing to lose to high society teenage cheaters, Lloyd and Fiona communicate via Morse code by tapping their fingers to hold their breath, surviving long enough to step onto a pothole-filled court rigged with traps against two brats armed with jet-powered rackets and ridiculous whips.
That's just pathetic.
Transforming the court into a true coliseum of cheating, the spoiled siblings sink the floor and spray foul-smelling mist, but they are trampled by the implacable synchronicity of the disguised spies. When the desperation of losing money hits, the teens call in the heavy artillery and order a sniper hidden in the air duct. In an act of pure cinematic heroism that further drenches the platinum spy's wet thoughts, Lloyd dives in front of a bullet to protect his colleague, revealing a protective vest under his sweaty shirt. Ignoring snipers and ball boys armed to the teeth, Lloyd hits back bullets and balls simultaneously with bizarre spins, ricocheting a bullet right into the bourgeois brat's gut and securing a traumatic tournament victory.
But we're no match for them!
When it's time to collect the prize, the secret police try to confiscate the valuable painting, but our man of 1,000 faces had already swapped the junk for a fifth-rate fake, keeping the original work tucked in his partner's bag. While giving a ride to her unrequited love, Fiona tries to squeeze out some explicit romantic compliment, only to be met by the hired assassin holding a sticky racket. Driven by pure possessive envy, the agent challenges Yor to a mortal duel, aiming to usurp her everyday title as the family mother. The result is brutal. Yor swings her ignorant arm with such violence that she slices the ball into splinters before launching a serve that breaks the sound barrier and shatters the racket against the stunned opponent's hardened chest. The loser flees weeping in her car, swearing to avenge her own humiliation. The next day, the narrative tragedy is revealed. The much-feared dossier capable of sinking the continent in a bloodbath was just a pathetic collection of actress photos a horny colonel was hiding from his own wife. Lloyd returns home carrying useless sweets for the family, while the rejected albino trains savagely in isolation in the mountains, swinging a colossal rock impaled on a branch. Dragging her cowardly inferiority complex across the pavement, our lethal housewife returns from work convinced she'll be kicked out by her husband because of a measly tennis match, feeding juicy gossip to the neighborhood's spiteful hens. Fearing a disastrous divorce might attract the sadistic hounds of the state security service, Lloyd bribes his scruffy informant to babysit the pink-haired runt and the precognitive dog, while he takes his fake wife to drown her sorrows at a posh bar. With her brain soaked in ethyl alcohol, Yor pours out her pathetic frustrations, feeling like aesthetic trash compared to her platinum blonde rival, and loudly demands to know if Lloyd has carnal inclinations toward his colleague. Seeing a golden opening in her gaping psychological vulnerability, the traumatized spy engages sleazy seducer mode to set a honey trap, attempting to steal the assassin's heart with honeyed whispers and suggestive touches. The response to such predatory flirting is a colossal kick straight to the blonde agent's chin, catapulting the charade to the ceiling and knocking him out for the first time since his childhood military trauma.
So I say let's get married for...
He wakes up slumped on a park bench, his head resting on the lap of his guilt-ridden aggressor, taking advantage of the lingering mild concussion. He delivers a plastic motivational speech, swearing that her animalistic strength is an invaluable pillar of their makeshift family. While the adults sort through their emotional baggage, the millionaire heiress Becky decides to sponsor Anya's social life, dragging the pink-haired brat to a consumerist paradise to enchant the target's second son. Turning the entire store into a schizophrenic private fitting room, Becky loses it trying on absurd outfits in the blind hope of catching Lloyd's eye, while Anya suffers an existential collapse wearing haute couture to the point of exhaustion. With no patience for such refinement, the telepathic urchin blows her entire budget on a hideous plush sheep keychain, gifting the rich girl a piece of questionable material that buries any notion of social class. Parading their fuzzy pink tackiness through the school halls, the duo crushes the arrogant brat's sour mood, provoking a shameful blush on the smitten boy's stupid face. The most elitist and snobbish event of the school year gathers the cream of Astania's society, and our blonde spy infiltrates disguised as a teacher, breaking into a cold sweat upon realizing the security detail would make a military base jealous. Meanwhile, the arrogant mini-dictator in the making, Damien, enters an existential panic and decides to chicken out in front of his own father, Donovan. Seeing her hair-based seduction plan fail, the telepathic runt decides to stalk the rich kid personally, only to be promptly labeled a bizarre creeper by Damien. Reading the father's mind and realizing the mission is going down the drain, Anya resorts to reverse psychological warfare. She humiliates the boy by confessing her own pathetic score of 17 points, declaring with sick pride that she will throw her failure in Lloyd's face. This completely distorted logic breaks Damien's mind, suddenly giving him the courage to face the social mummy who sired him. Simultaneously, Anya passes out from boredom waiting for a dramatic soap opera moment and leaves with Becky, handing Lloyd the perfect excuse to use a cheap sheep keychain as bait for an introduction. Intercepting the group of children, Lloyd finally stands face to face with the villainous kingpin, Donovan Desmond. The spy delivers a theatrical monologue brown-nosing the target and praising Damien's fake essay, trying to squeeze any scrap of emotion out of that terrifying political zombie. Donovan flashes a psychopathic smile, dropping a dense nihilistic lecture on how children are untrustworthy strangers, leaving his heir in instant depression. However, Lloyd's social venom works, softening the big shot's defensive ground. When Lloyd takes his leave, Damien finally snaps, shouting his desperate academic resume at his father, receiving a "congratulations" as warm as the North Pole in return. The spy returns home claiming a mission victory, only to find his pink-haired bioweapon snoring on the couch, mumbling delusions about facing a final boss she clearly lacks the cognitive capacity to crush. Our favorite domestic killing machine performs a lethal cleanup on a terrorist group, but makes a rookie mistake and takes a cockeyed bullet straight to the buttocks.
It's time for you to die!
She returns home dragging her wounded glutes, looking like a bloodthirsty killer due to the excruciating pain. Naturally, our traumatized spy reads the situation with the emotional intelligence of a brick, thinking his fake wife is fuming because she was forced to go grocery shopping. Desperate not to lose his invaluable marital cover, Lloyd drags Yuri on a reconciliation date, flaunting 862 romantic plans that go straight into the trash because she physically refuses to sit down, canceling all motorized tours. Not missing a chance to monitor the romantic chaos, the telepathic runt and the scruffy informant camouflage themselves in the shadows, following the couple to a high-end luxury restaurant. What seemed like an uncomfortable dinner turns into a police matter when the sole surviving terrorist from Yuri's massacre appears dressed as a waiter, ready to avenge his fallen comrades. He serves the brunette a cocktail spiked with pure pufferfish poison. Watching the disaster unfold from the ventilation duct, Anya tries to warn her, but Yuri downs the lethal glass in one go. Contrary to all medical literature, instead of foaming at the mouth, the lethal toxin paralyzes the assassin's nervous system, acting as the perfect numbing anesthesia for her wounded backside.
Doesn't it?
The pain in my body's completely gone. I feel 100 times better.
Magically cured by the poison, Yuri starts smiling like a love-struck lunatic, breaking the waiter's mind. Shocked by the woman's surreal immortality, the terrorist tries to cook up a peanut bomb in the pantry, but slips on cooking oil like a pathetic clown. Anya emerges from the ceiling, threatening the loser with his girlfriend's name. With the failed assassination and her numbed rear, Yuri finally enjoys the Ferris wheel, while Lloyd breathes a sigh of relief. The problem is that the next day, the poison wears off, and the pain in the butt returns with a vengeance, leaving the spy completely lost once again. The unemployed precognitive dog has a dark premonition where everything goes black, soon realizing that his imminent cause of death will be the radioactive dinner prepared by Yuri's deadly hands. Knowing his canine entrails will melt if he chews that toxic sludge, the fluffy doormat decides his only chance of avoiding stomach obliteration is to hurry Lloyd's return. He sneaks out and sniffs out his owner in the middle of a corporate break-in, where the spy is trying to brazenly steal a truth serum from a lab. Using pure magical intuition, the dog guides Lloyd through a clear route, orchestrates a cowardly distraction for the guards with a fake note, and helps the agent knock out the losers, ensuring the father gets home early to block the culinary apocalypse in his bowl. On the other side of the social spectrum, Damien, the arrogant mini-project, has the deep eyes of someone who fried their neurons pulling an all-nighter over academic textbooks. The crazy, pomp-obsessed coordinator notices the boy's funereal state and sentences him to a cleaning punishment. His two loyal lackeys decide to sabotage their own school records just to lick the dirty floor alongside their boss, starring in Brotherhood scenes so cringeworthy the school has to intervene.
Do I look like an Imperial Scholar or what?
In a desperate act to make these snobbish brats touch grass, the hardline caretaker drags them on a survival catastrophe into the woods. The aspiring untouchable elite are thrown into a traumatizing canoe trip, plunging miserably into shallow water like sacks of potatoes, and are even forced to gut dirty worms to fish for their own food. Away from the shackles of fickle society, the little group ignores the silver cutlery, wolfs down roasted fish by the fire, and contemplates the cosmos reflected in the muddy lake water. Damien finally stops obsessing over perfect grades after realizing the world won't end because of a literature test. Back at the school's concrete halls, the elegant teacher delights in reading the children's shoddy reports, fully satisfied that the bourgeois runts gained a tiny fraction of personality. The sadistic policeman with a sister complex and an obvious lack of therapy strikes again. Yuri is tasked with stalking Franklin, a failed journalist who writes long-winded hit pieces against the government. Being the pathetic workaholic he is, our state lapdog accepts the mission with a smile and spends sleepless nights breathing down the target's neck. They catch Franklin in the act of creating fake news, throwing some kid's toy gun in the trash just to take dramatic photos. A true genius of modern journalism. During the obsessive spying, Yuri overhears the criminal whimpering to his father about wanting a decent country and needing cash. This almost pinches our mental patient's frozen heart, but not enough to stop the inevitable. Yuri waits for the guy to mail his gossip and then pops up at his door with the riot squad. In a burst of distorted kindness, he handcuffs the journalist far away from his family and even promises to pay the father's emergency welfare. Franklin tries to play the philosopher, asking who the real trash is, the rebel or the state's little dog, but Yuri gives the obvious answer. He only cares about protecting his sister. The rest of the world can burn.
The one doing something harmful to his family, I'd never hurt mine.
After receiving an ego massage from his boss, Yuri invades the forger home just to beg for affection. He gets a pat on the head from Yor, which makes him shed tears of pure, repressed fraternal lust, while Anya nearly has a seizure reading his disgusting thoughts. Speaking of radioactive trash, the Bondment cartoon on TV shows the spy being beaten to death by all 50 of his dissatisfied girlfriends, leaving Lloyd absolutely disgusted by that level of animated debauchery. Behind the scenes, the father of the year tries to please his daughter at the mall and ends up taking her to a public pool. The plan backfires when the telepathic brat reads the minds of the other children and discovers she is swimming in an ocean of warm childhood pee. Irreversibly traumatized, she decides never to step in that bladder soup again, and for good measure, oversleeps and misses school the next day. Academic despair reaches critical levels with the ridiculous rumor that a gourmet macaron made by an elderly chef can magically bestow genius upon the minds of idiots. Anya and her rich bestie rush to the cafeteria drooling for the dessert, but Damien's mini-arrogant squad had the same bright idea. The small detail is that the useless George swallowed the whole catalog and bought the last tray. Acting like pint-sized mobsters, the kids put the squeeze on him and extort 4 sweets from the poor oppressed boy. Since there are 5 runts for 4 designer macarons, they decide to settle who stays hungry with a damn card game. Anya tries to use her broken mental powers to empty her hand, but her sweaty face of despair is more readable than a neon street sign. Seeing his rival on the verge of crying rivers of humiliation, Damien, the simp in training, swallows his pride, takes the old maid card on purpose, and tanks the game just to save the girl, later brutally rejecting her charity to keep his pose. Unfortunately, chewing fine French pastry doesn't fix a lack of gray matter, and Anya fails her exams miserably, shocking exactly 0 people. It's up to Lloyd to stuff the girl with a mountain of Salisbury steak to cure the pit of depression she's become. Meanwhile, the scruffy and eternally single informant tries to play the hero to score a woman. Moving heaven and earth to hunt down a damn stray cat, Lloyd successfully tells him to get lost, so it's up to Yor to do some charity work. The incel turns on a pheromone machine that converts the street into a tsunami of possessive felines that nearly swallow them both alive. When the target animal bolts for the main road, Yor ignores the laws of physics, rips parts of her friend's overpriced robotic armor off with her bare hands, and hurls the piece of metal at the cat with the surgical precision of an anti-tank missile. The bizarre capture works, and he runs to return the pet, only to hear from the girl that she already has a boyfriend. Crushed by reality and more of a cuck than ever, he cries, embracing his own failure. Yor returns to the office with a wide smile, only to be interrupted by a sinister call from the underworld confirming that her holiday from killing people is over. The civil servant, full of dangerous secrets, goes for a peaceful stroll in the park, which results in her own boss trying to decapitate her with pruning shears in what he calls a friendly reflex evaluation. Surviving without wrinkling her skirt, Yor earns her new headache, acting as a human shield to protect a mob widow and her smelly baby aboard the obscenely luxurious cruise ship, Princess Lorelei. At the same time, at the city mall, the pink-haired brat scans the dirty mind of a raffle worker, discovers the prizes are rigged, and aggressively steals the tickets for that very same extravagant trip. The storm of coincidences is set. With a managerial miracle, the government agency grants our exhausted spy a vacation, pushing the entire family toward the gargantuan ship. Anya enters the deck with expectations of majestic nobility, only to open the door to their third-class room and discover their sleeping cage has the floor space of a funeral casket. While the humble squeeze their guts in crappy bunks, Yor breathes the fresh air of the top tier, meeting her high-stakes clients. The client, Olka, flaunts a hired theatrical husband and a mountain of paralyzing stress. Our lethal nanny checks every square inch of the suite for holes where death might enter, but the widow demands to put her face outside to breathe the proletarian sea air. Yor breaks into a cold sweat, terrified of accidentally bumping into her own family. Speaking of the busybodies, Lloyd throws the relax button out the window and decides to treat the ship's attractions like a Cold War infiltration field, monitoring threats while swearing he is providing pure quality recreation. On another part of the deck, Yor uses thrift store disguises to try and hide the client from prying eyes. Letting her guard down in front of the turbulent sea, the widow confesses the baby's name is Graham, a touching detail that slips straight into a hidden spy microphone. All their sad gossip hands their exact location on a silver platter to the bloodthirsty hitmen already on board and ready to slice everyone up. leaving her office gossip co-workers envying a trip they imagine to be pure luxury. Our lethal nanny is breaking a cold sweat at a tense first-class dinner while trying not to choke on her own saliva. The gray-haired manager, Matthew, tells her to relax since enemies don't attack in public, but shortly after, the old man has to drag a nosy assassin into a corner, snap all his limbs like toothpicks, and dump the trash into the ocean after discovering a whole army of mercenaries is competing to see who takes the widow's head first. When a hitman knocks on the suite door, Yuri simply hurls her massive stiletto, pinning the loser's head to the wall with the casualness of someone hanging a picture. To escape the pandemonium, the team dons masquerade masks and infiltrates a posh ball. Our assassin senses the bloodlust in the air and resolves the situation elegantly, knocking out a henchman by flicking a button into his neck and crushing another idiot's hand bones while pretending to dance the waltz. On the lower deck, our exhausted spy is frying his brain over whether to buy a skull keychain for the pink-haired brat, treating the trivial request like a Cold War puzzle. Anya, using her mental antenna, catches the dirty thoughts of a scythe-wielding mercenary named Barnaby, who is heading straight to mince her mother. To prevent the family from discovering the secret and the circus from catching fire, the manipulative runt demands Lloyd prove he's a fun dad by trying on every outfit in the store. With the spy trapped in the fitting room, Barnaby crosses paths with Yuri's group and spins his massive weapon ready to cut them down, but our protagonist blocks the attack. Discovering the scythe guy can actually take a hit, the battle against the scythe maniac gains an unwanted audience, but the telepathic brat saves the day by screaming that it's all just a big circus show. Relieved at not having ruined her double life, Yuri lets loose, weaving chains around Barnaby like a Christmas present and crushing the loser's pressure points until he blacks out, finishing the slaughter with a theatrical bow. Meanwhile, the master of disguise emerges from the fitting room dressed like the ship's biggest clown, thinking he's reached the peak of fun fatherhood, only to be humiliated by his daughter calling him pathetic. In the victim's old cabin, the leader of the assassins sniffs the mattress and furniture like a perverted bloodhound, deducing from the scent that one of the bodyguards curiously emits no smell at all. Back at the safe house, the rent-a-husband Zeb stammers while explaining his canine loyalty to the mob widow, remembering the bread she fed him in their childhood. Matthew kills the romantic mood by demanding focus on the mission, causing Yuri to fall into an existential crisis about dragging her own feet for fear of getting hurt and leaving Lloyd and Anya fake widowed. Away from the ocean, Frankie tries to use the furry psychic bond to pick up women at the park, proving he's still as single as you. Determined not to fail the ultimate mission of understanding a child, Lloyd takes Anya to mini-golf, only to humiliate the little one by sinking every single hole on the first try with his perfect balls. The brat spends the day trying to ditch her dad to help with the deck massacre but ends up distracted by toys and falls into a dinner depression for forgetting the heroine of the slaughter. When Matthew receives the glorious getaway call for the rescue boat over the radio, the info leaks straight to the bloodhound leader, who smiles from ear to ear, setting up the perfect ambush. Guiding the widow and the crying baby to the back of the ship just before the fireworks go off, the group stumbles into the bloodhound leader's trap, who has stacked snipers across every inch of the deck. While Lloyd carries the pink-haired runt on his shoulders to see the lights in the sky, hell explodes on the sea surface with a precision bullet grazing our pet assassin's arm. Matthew pulls out a rifle and pops brains from a distance, allowing Zeb to act as a fat human shield for the client while Yuri kicks open a hatch and hides the valuable cargo from the rain of lead. Masking the carnage with the colorful thuds in the sky, Yuri enters meat grinder mode, spinning through mercenaries armed with claws, toxic gases and flying chakrams, destroying lungs and throats while Old Man Matthew follows behind, literally sweeping up the corpses like an underpaid janitor. The party ends when a bastard with electric batons and a brute with massive fists enter the fray, forcing Yuri to shove a sparking iron into the poor guy's wide mouth and use her hardened fingers to rapidly penetrate the big man's abdomen in a barrage of piercing strikes. Then comes the final swordsman, cutting through the wind and knocking Matthew out with a blow from his scabbard. During the confrontation, our protagonist loses her weapon, gets a haircut she's terrified will look ugly for her husband, and is slammed into the wall. Questioning her sanity, Yuri fears she is no longer needed by her obsessed brother, but rejects the enemy leader's offer of dirty money, grabbing the swordsman's thick steel blade with her bare hands until the sword shatters. She tanks a deep gash to her chest with a smile and kicks the smug samurai into the hereafter, reaffirming her sadistic love for her new facade of a family.
Having to put up with such a tough job takes real grit and dedication.
Far away in the cold city, the sister-obsessed cop faints during a chase, hit by a fierce flu and physical withdrawal in her absence. He hallucinates about the horrific tea Yuri used to make in their childhood, after she'd bathe in blood-killing wild boars and strangle him with whole onions. Yuri swallows his co-worker's boiled weeds and pukes on the floor, completely deranged, wishing to clean the world with bullets just to see his maniac sister smile again. While our favorite assassin continues her game of slice the swordsman on the roof, Lloyd decides that being a present father is overrated and dumps the telepath in a daycare arcade so he can play Bomb Squad. Using the flimsy excuse of being a former Marine, the blonde spy descends to the hold and finds an explosive perfect for framing the West, taking control of the situation while the state security agents break into a cold sweat. Far from there, the pink-haired runt escapes her escort and finds her fake mom's lost stiletto. Since her short arms have no reach, she hurls the blade at the ceiling, missing miserably, but triggering a Looney Tunes-level butterfly effect that makes a henchman trip, shoot his partner, and the stiletto bounce perfectly to sink deep into the bastard's backside. With her weapon back in hand, Yuri goes on the final attack. The group leader tries to shoot her but takes heavy lead from Old Man Matthew and collapses. The assassin crosses paths with the swordsman in one fatal cut, leaving the samurai drooling blood on the floor, while Anya celebrates the carnage in silence.
It's finally over. I'm exhausted.
In the hold, Lloyd deactivates the explosive toy, but his protagonist's sixth sense warns him there's more. The wounded leader bumps into the traitorous informant on a boat, who confesses he wants to sink the whole cruise ship to start a war. But before the master plan takes off, our telepath sees a suspicious clock and snitches to the first crewman she sees. Lloyd rips the clock off the wall and hurls it into the sea, tearing through the wind and causing a massive explosion that tosses both boat villains straight into a pool of hungry sharks. At the end of the bloodbath, Yuri gets a warm hug from the mob widow and the crying baby, promising to hide her slashed chest and bruised face from her hubby. Lloyd returns to pick up the pink anchor at the daycare, spiraling internally for having abandoned his fake family with no clue that his wife spent the night rubbing her blade against dozens of men. The sham family finally disembarks on the tropical paradise island, with Lloyd sweating through layers of paranoia trying to act like a normal human, while Yuri shoves lame excuses down everyone's throats to hide her bruised face. They dive into a frenetic tourist mode, cycling, exploring caves, and playing with sheep, all while the assassin mentally prays her torn chest doesn't start leaking blood. Determined to hide her colossal wound, Yuri zips herself into a neck-high wetsuit and goes surfing, but she forgets to check her brute strength and launches the pink-haired pipsqueak into low Earth orbit, forcing the spy to snatch the girl out of mid-air before she becomes sand paste.
Go!
With the adrenaline gone, Yuri passes out from exhaustion on her imaginary husband's shoulder, forcing Lloyd to carry both dead weights back to the ship, like a glorified pack mule. Back home, the bizarre routine resumes. Lloyd reports the near-cruise apocalypse to his one-eyed boss, while Yuri hands out ghastly skeleton keychains to her ungrateful co-workers. But the true massacre happens at the school for the elite. Our resident telepath tries to inflate her ego by bragging about the fancy trip, only to be publicly humiliated when billionaire brat Becky reveals she stayed in the Imperial Suite while Anya slept in a third-class broom closet. Desperate for crumbs of attention, Anya vomits out a wild story about the ship being attacked by fearsome underwater octopus men, which only makes the entire class laugh in her face until they're breathless. The day ends with a pathetic dinner where Lloyd and the creepily obsessed cop Yuri, two top-tier hypocrites who lie even when they breathe, give a moralizing sermon on how lying is a rotten habit, forcing the poor kid to promise to be honest while she reads the filthy minds of everyone in the room. The wealthy, hormone-crazed heiress decides to put her plans to steal another woman's husband into action, showing up at the forger's doorstep out of the blue to seduce the blonde spy. As soon as Lloyd flashes a rehearsed smile, Becky's blood pressure plummets, and she drops stone cold, completely hypnotized. Dismissing their living room as a cramped junk room, the brat focuses on the prize and throws her cheap charm at Lloyd, who offers only stiff, robotic responses, his mind focused solely on extracting info about her father. When the assassin returns from walking the dog, the evening tea turns into a war zone. Becky pretends to be drunk by whining against Lloyd's neck, which sends Yor into a schizophrenic panic, thinking she accidentally poisoned the child with imaginary alcohol. She hoists the girl over her shoulder and sprints into the street like a runaway tractor, getting hit full-on by a speeding car, rolling across the asphalt and jumping up instantly as if she'd only been flicked, resuming her 100-mile-per-hour dash. Terrified by the woman's immortality, the brat confesses her farce, and Yor finally breathes a sigh of relief. Blindly believing that brute force is the key to the spy's heart, Becky tries to hit a strength test machine at the park and collapses under the weight of the hammer. Yor decides to show her how it's done, grabbing the mallet and shattering the entire machine into scattered shards, convincing the rich kid to become her pupil in the art of skull crushing.
Here goes.
The episode ends by dragging our platinum agent's face through the mud. Fiona spent her entire vacation clearing the protagonist's missions and punching bears in the mountains to outmatch the fake wife's strength. When she finally hands the paperwork to her unreachable love, she only receives the pathetic leftovers of the cruise keychains. Yet she runs through the hospital halls clutching the trash like she just won the lottery. The blonde spy thinks it's a great idea to turn the family's mountain of white fur into a lethal tactical weapon. Since the tiny telepath would rather fold paper than leave the house, Lloyd drags the dog to the park and uses the scruffy informant as a literal guinea pig. But the precognitive hound is so harmless, he wouldn't even bite an ankle. So Frankie suggests turning this training hell into a fun walk before they bail. In the middle of the street, the dog has a vision of a kid dropping an ice cream cone and tries to play the hero, but he ends up trampling everything and causing the exact mess that leaves the kid crying on the pavement with his dessert ruined. Lloyd buys a triple scoop cone to shut the kid up, ignoring that the dog just dragged a violent old man by his coat just to keep him from being flattened by a bicycle. The madness peaks when the beast predicts an apartment on fire and sniffs out the path to chaos. Ignoring the spy's orders, the dog busts through the gates of fiery hell to save a useless pup named Daisy.
What? Oh. Stop it, Bond! No one's inside! What the hell are you doing?
With the ceiling collapsing on their heads, Lloyd shoves a grocery bag over his face to avoid inhaling smoke, and the two leap from a second-story window like extras in a low-budget action flick. When the amateur firefighters throw a bucket of water on the dog to put out his flaming fur, the fluffy giant shrivels up, revealing he has the thickness of a malnourished spaghetti noodle, forcing L0ID to hold back a laugh at the humiliated beast's face. The spaghetti dog still manages to bite the leg of a fire-obsessed spectator who was drooling over the destruction, revealing a pyromaniac with a backpack full of accelerant. The spy trips the criminal's circuit breaker with a well-placed punch and flees the scene to avoid giving the cops an autograph. Exhausted at home, the brat reads their minds, discovers the absolute chaos of the walk, and humiliates her father by sticking a paper "Good Boy" star on his chest. While trying to play the doting dad at the park, the blonde spy is interrupted when the precognitive dog and the telepathic kid realize the construction worker is 2 seconds away from going Joker. The brat spins a lie about wanting to go home to study, earning points with her parents, only to follow the stressed-out worker. After taking bird droppings to the face, the cuckolded worker finally snaps, guns his excavator, and starts demolishing the park like a rabid animal. The only rational solution in Lloyd's head is to hijack another 30-ton machine and start a tractor brawl in the middle of the street. While metal clashes and the family man twists the worker's arm to knock him out, the assassin holds up tons of rubble to save an old man, justifying her Greek god strength by claiming she learned the moves at the circus. Confident they save the day, they head home, but karma bites the brat's leg when Lloyd shoves books in her face and demands she follow through on her studying lie, while Yor strikes terror into their hearts by promising a home-cooked banquet. Cut to the agency base, where the platinum agent receives a high-level national security mission. The fat minister is crying with rage because his cake is missing strawberries due to a political embargo. Needing to forge a government seal, Fiona seeks out Lloyd's contact, who happens to be the scruffy informant. His price is steep, forcing the ice-cold spy to pretend to be his girlfriend at a club, making Fiona hold back vomit while Frankie brags to his pathetic friends. When the secret police ambush the forger in an alley, Fiona dishes out flying kicks and stabs with the pent-up fury of someone who just wants a whiff of the protagonist's neck. Frankie even tries to jump in front of a bullet to play the anime hero, but she'd already wiped the floor with the agents herself.
Get down! The knife from earlier. I guess you didn't even need my help.
He delivers the forged documents the next day, but refuses to become the Platinum Agent's official doormat, thinking he's actually got some dignity left. Terror walks the halls of the elite school in the form of a sadistic old hag handing out tonitrus bolts like they're church flyers. She sniffs out even the slightest infraction, spreading panic with the legend of the boy who forgot his handkerchief, wiped his hands on his pants, was nicknamed Pee-Pants, and eventually became an anti-government terrorist. During a surprise inspection, Mini Lord Damien freezes, realizing he didn't bring his $1,000,000 handkerchief. Knowing that a punishment for the heir would ruin her father's plans, the tiny telepath sacrifices her own used rag and tosses it to the rich kid. The witch buys Damien's lame excuse, but when it's Anya's turn, the old hag drops a lightning bolt straight onto her chest, leaving the brat sobbing for failing at basic hygiene. Damien swallows his pride and swears to return the favor, but when Anya returns home and Lloyd sees the seal of failure stuck to his daughter's clothes, the spy's brain collapses, and he drops dead weight to the floor. Without warning, we're swallowed by a flashback to young Lloyd's glory days in the countryside, back when he thought war was just playing with invisible guns. Complaining about his lack of proper gear, he gets smacked by his hyper-strict father, who spits pacifist speeches while yelling at his wife all day. In an act of rebellion, the kid lies to the old man and gets some dirty money to buy plastic helmets and rifles, but useless morality gnaws at his mind, leading the boy to ditch his friends and work at a food stall to clear his conscience and pay his dad back. It is at that exact moment of regret that the universe laughs in his face. The enemy army bombs the entire plaza, blowing up the children's hideout and burying the blonde boy under tons of rubble, ending his childhood abruptly as the world sinks into the bloody chaos of real war. After eating dirt in an enemy bombing, our blonde protagonist wakes up to see the world collapsing around him. His mother drags the kid to another city, but peace lasts shorter than a paycheck. His father never returns from the trenches, and a second airstrike turns their new home into dust, leaving the kid completely alone to cry in a brutal world. Years pass, Innocence dies, and he adopts the identity of Lawrence Spoofy, forging his age to join the army and trade military tactics for trauma. One night in the mountains, he bumps into a cowardly big-haired guy named Frankie, who begs for his life simply because he doesn't want to bite the dust without ever touching a woman, an existential goal as pathetic as your New Year's resolutions. Lloyd almost sends the poor guy to the afterlife as revenge for his country, but the army shows up and ruins their intimate moment, forcing a desperate escape. As if the universe wanted to spit in his face one more time, the blonde discovers his old childhood friends are miraculously alive, only for them to be sent on a suicide mission that same night and return home in the form of silver dog tags. Drowning in depression, he realizes that ignorance is an unforgivable sin until a suit steps out of the shadows, revealing he knows all the boy's dirty secrets and offering him a chance to become a puppet for intelligence services. With no reason left to live, he accepts the blackmail and falls into the clutches of the sadistic old witch Sylvia, who makes his life hell during the most lethal training possible. The spy wakes up in a cold sweat on his sofa, struggling to remember he now has a fake family to support. Anya senses her father's despair and pats his head like a tame puppy, and Lloyd's giant brain focuses on the most important thing in life, ensuring the brat builds connections with the rich kids. With Bond's stomach rumbling louder than the bombs in his nightmare, the family finally joins together to eat, pretending the world outside isn't an infernal chaos. The secret information war reaches peak tabloid drama when a world-famous opera singer decides to travel west, only for the press to vomit out scandalous news about his extramarital affairs and criminal insults toward disabled veterans. While a useless, whining wise recruit refuses to protect the supposed sleazy womanizer, Mommy Sylvia terrifies the kid's soul, teaching him the hard way that the media is just a loudspeaker paid for by filthy politicians during wartime. Soon, the agents sniff out a real death threat against the singer, forcing Sylvia to use the absolute power of a local kebab vendor to distract security at the back door. When an extremist guard pulls a gun to dispense his sick populist version of justice, Sylvia whips her belt out, lashes the weapon from the bastard's hand without mercy, and shatters his jaw with a stunning punch. In the end, the arrogant recruit discovers that the singer's juicy sex scandals, fleeing a mob boss after sleeping with his wife, might actually be true, and Sylvia simply tells the sucker to figure out the truth himself. Meanwhile, the pink-haired brat is rotting with boredom waiting for the school bus until the elegance-obsessed old man Henderson bribes her with sweets to make her carry heavy equipment for free. The professor tries to inject some morality into Anya's hollow head, delivering delivering a speech about how elite students sweated hard and thick blood to earn their awards. Being the shameless materialist she is, Anya just agrees that the coveted Stellas are a cool visual accessory, leaving the veteran completely sickened by the tiny cosmic brat's superficiality. But when she gets home and reads the melted minds of her parents, who are bottled up with exhaustion, the telepath absorbs the shock of adult life and demands Lloyd put her brain to work. The great spy processes this miraculous display of willpower in the worst way possible, panicking as he deduces she must have taken another bolt of punishment at school, causing his body to instantly shut down and drop stone cold to the floor, needing to be fished back from the beyond by Yor's frantic arms.
Did you get another Tenitris bolt? Please tell me that's not true.
Don't worry, I'll get dinner started right away. Lloyd, stay with us!
The black-haired killing machine goes undercover in the streets to buy cakes in a desperate attempt to fix her daughter's diplomatic aggression toward the rich kid. But her social anxiety and fear of being reported to the secret police reach such pathetic levels that she cowardly flees from the neighborhood gossips. However, luck smiles on the assassin at the department store when she uses her bizarre reflexes to stop a richly dressed woman from kissing the stairs. Impressed by the power in Yor's legs, the stranger drags the poor woman into a squad of idle socialites to play community volleyball. Completely clueless about how a normal human functions, Yor tries to annihilate the opposing team single-handedly, until the wealthy leader teaches her to suppress her bloodlust and just play with the balls without destroying the entire gym. During a luxurious afternoon tea party, the conversation flows among the normal moms, and the hostess finally drops the nuclear bomb of her identity. She is Melinda Desmond, the isolated wife of the former prime minister, and the ultimate target of Yor's husband's mission. When the assassin arrives in the comfort of her home and casually spits this info out at the table, Lloyd's paranoid cortex fries his brain cells in seconds, calculating every tiny chance he's fallen into a government mental trap, before finally tossing the panic aside to give birth to the glorious Plan C. He decides to exploit his wife's fantastic naivety so she can squeeze into the social circle of the wealthy elites, searching for a direct bridge to the reclusive husband. Knowing her resume as a clandestine reaper stains the family routine, Yor asks for official permission from her boss, the shrub pruner, who clears the macabre, gossiping friendship while darkly reminding her that Lloyd must never suspect her conservative opinions. Meanwhile, after invading her father's scheme-filled head and riding the wave of her own abandonment terror, fear of losing her tactical usefulness, the pink gnome wakes up to the bloody reality of school life. Her filthy rich friend injects a sleazy teenage script into Anya's head, encouraging the ridiculous tactic of running with toast in her mouth and crashing head-on into the young heartthrob. Believing she's playing 4D chess, Anya shoves a rubbery burger between her teeth, accelerates like a torpedo without brakes toward the rich kid, and faceplants directly into the floor.
Friendship crash! I didn't say crash, Anya, just bump him!
Wow, just look at her. Was she seriously eating bread that fell on the ground?
The romantic humiliation reaches stratospheric levels of secondhand embarrassment when Anya stands up in pure, uncontrolled rage and accidentally ejects the chewed-up meat onto the glorious top of the boy's hair, guaranteeing a lifetime supply of furious rivalry. The manipulative pink gnome decides to collect the rich kid's debt by demanding free snacks, proving that emotional blackmail starts early. But instead of devouring the treats, she tries to infiltrate the Desmond mansion using the new macabre friendship between Yor and Melinda as an excuse. The arrogant boy refuses the offer and still thinks the Forger family is trying to gold dig him, confusing the cold and calculating operations tricks with a cheap teen romance. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the perfect spy tries to use his lab coat to fish for high society VIP contacts. However, the medical director, a total needy loser named Gerald, decides to make Lloyd's life a living hell purely because he's a massive simp for Fiona. This pathetic doctor tries to humiliate our protagonist by spiking his coffee with laxatives and sticking toilet paper to his shoe, tactics as mature as yours when you get rejected. Since the blonde's charm is immune to embarrassment, earning only sympathy from patients, the frustrated cuckold snaps and reports Lloyd to the secret police as a spy. To the simp doctor's despair, the agents who show up to investigate are just Frankie and Fiona in disguise, ready to annihilate his career. They rub forged evidence in the sweating director's face, but Lloyd embraces tactical phoniness and forgives the doctor in front of everyone, trapping the idiot in an an eternal leash of gratitude. Inspired by this masterstroke of psychological manipulation, Anya tries to pull the same forgiveness stunt on Damien during the school trip. Her brilliant strategy consists of throwing a paper ball at his face and making a demonic grimace while waiting for his gratitude.
Huh?
Obviously, the rich kid just retaliates and goes off to eat his snacks with his henchmen. But before the pink dwarf can offer dog food in exchange for affection, the school bus is hijacked out of nowhere by a terrorist group called Red Circus. The leader points a shotgun at everyone's face, proving that public and private school field trips always end in the same chaos. Chaos erupts as the elite Eden Academy desperately tries to sweep the bus hijacking under the rug. Inside the vehicle, the collective terror of the pampered brats fries Anya's telepathic brain until a pint-sized tough guy calms the nursery by reminding them their parents have enough money to buy the entire government. The terrorist leader confirms they are their golden ticket hostages to extort the authorities, while the head of the spy agency forbids Lloyd from abandoning his current mission, leaving the rescue in the hands of the incompetent local police. Anya fakes a bathroom break just to read the driver's mind and locate their hideout. Using every ounce of her accumulated cunning, she and the socialite Becky toss a SOS note out the window, while Damien tries to cover for them by pretending he also needs to relieve himself. The terrorist catches onto the stunt and fits an explosive collar directly onto the pink brat's neck to ensure total obedience. When the news reaches the state security service, Yuri's sister complex hits the stratosphere. He conjures a ridiculous imaginary scenario of Yor weeping at her fake niece's grave and goes charging after the bus like a rabid dog. Meanwhile, Anya reads the kidnapper's mind and discovers the bomb is phonier than her school grades. Diving headfirst into character, she tries to impress Damien by drumming on her own explosive neck. Thinking she's the bravest soul alive, Damien offers his own neck for the slaughter, earns an identical plastic bomb, and nearly breaks down in tears until the telepath holds his sweaty little hands.
But I'm just so scared.
It'll be okay.
The vehicle's tires are shredded by a police spike strip, and the standoff begins. The terrorist demands the release of several rebels, but the secret police already know most of them have become fertilizer. While the school board praises Damien's restrained sobbing, Yuri hijacks the operation and uses his gutter informants to hunt down a second missing bus. As the police lay siege to the bus, the blue-blooded heirs are forced to relieve themselves in the bushes like common peasants. The academy's elegant old man, Henry Henderson, decides to play the hero and swaps places with the injured tutor just to deliver survival rations to the kidnapped nursery. Sitting in the hostage seat, the professor tries to soften the terrorist's heart by appealing to his fatherhood, only to discover that the gunman's motivation is the death of his own daughter at the hands of the oppressive state. Capturing all this depressing drama via telepathy, the pink gnome gets a front-row seat to the terrorist's tragic past. Meanwhile, the paranoid brother-in-law storms the hideout of the second bus, raining bullets on the scum. Despite taking a shot to the shoulder, Yuri neutralizes the thugs and rescues the other children, forcing the police to rub it in the original kidnappers' faces that their rebellion has gone down the drain. Desperate at the news, the leader's lackey decides that blowing up the entire bus is the best retirement plan possible. With the assassin mother back home breaking into a cold sweat from maternal intuition, Anya senses the impending tragedy and decides it's her time to shine. She demands more food to stall for time, improvising a cheap speech stolen from Lloyd about creating a world where children don't have to cry. The pink brat's absurd audacity causes the terrorist to hallucinate his deceased daughter, completely softening the old man, who rips the fake explosive collar off her. Remembering that his daughter's teachings were about helping others rather than blowing up rich kids, the terrorist leader drops his weapons, kicks the revolution to the curb, and surrenders peacefully. The remaining fanatic refuses to yield, tries to ram the vehicle through the police blockade, and grabs Anya as a human shield in a pathetic escape on foot. But before he can blink, the Black Bell family maid drops from the sky like a geriatric ninja, discharges a full-voltage taser directly into the bastard's brain, and rescues the telepath with superb style. The students are evacuated, the traumatized leader is caged, and the local news cashes in on the misery by broadcasting the chaos live. At the elite academy, the Tough as Nails quartet receives the coveted Stella Star for not dying during the kidnapping, with the elegant Henderson shedding tears of pride while the school conveniently sweeps the trauma under the rug. Flashing back to the night of the crime, the background characters are rescued by their parents until only the pink gnome and the blue-blooded heir remain. In a rare moment of sanity, Yuri, the boy praises Anya, making her salivate at the thought of infiltrating his mansion, but the kid douses her with cold water by revealing his repulsive family couldn't care less about his existence. Before the depression hits too hard, the assassin mother arrives drifting the car, and Anya finally breaks down in tears while the spy father watches from the shadows.
Looks like you came racing back here for a bunch of nothing, huh?
Ready to cook a massive meal to compensate for his parental absence. The boy's mother finally appears, flaunting an affection that lasts exactly 2 seconds. The telepath reads her mind and discovers a radioactive pit of bizarre maternal resentment. Back in the present, Anya's ego is so inflated by her second star that Lloyd mistakes it for PTSD and is manipulated into buying her cake. At school, the brat embraces the Starlight Duo title and tries to implement Plan B, luring the rich kid to her house by inventing absurd stories about her family's strength. The socialite Becky fans the flames by saying they train hard with Yuri, making the entire school want to become the assassin's disciples. Feeling the spotlight slip away, Minnie Desmond calls Anya an idiot, pointing out that her family is trash, which sends the telepath into the fetal position, crying as her expectations of being a tough girl are shattered. In a moment of pure social panic, the boy apologizes and promises to buy her cake, ruining his tough guy act in front of his lackeys as the two go back to bickering like an old married couple all the way to class. The tutor, traumatized by the kidnapping, suffers from cold sweat nightmares and goes whimpering to our favorite spy psychiatrist's office. Lloyd smells the lie instantly and breaks the patient's mind, revealing his stress has nothing to do with armed terrorists, but rather the daily terror of living with his own wife. Like any good therapist, Lloyd advises dialogue, but the cowardly man would rather face a firing squad than talk to his spouse. Meanwhile, the white-haired agent, Nightfall, listens through the walls, salivating at the chance to be the protagonist's perfect, submissive wife under the same roof. In another corner of the city, the professional assassin decides to pull some overtime at City Hall to help her venomous co-workers, and ends up dragged to a dinner. After tossing back a few drinks and letting her brain marinate in alcohol, she discovers that the national sport of married women is trash-talking their husbands. Feeling the social pressure beating against her neck, she tries to invent flaws for the spy, but her lying skills are so pathetic she falls into a violent delusion, imagining she needs to ask permission to assassinate her own husband just to have something to complain about. Her colleagues think she's absurdly needy and suggest she greet Lloyd at home with at least a wet kiss. Arriving home distraught at the idea of physical contact, the assassin dodges her husband's approach and performs a brutal backflip as a reflex, leaving the spy completely baffled, while the pink gnome mumbles in her sleep about her parents rubbing against each other and making too much noise.
What?
Papa and Mama are flirting really loud tonight.
The next day, the space race becomes the talk of the town. When Anya starts playing paper rockets with Ewan, young Desmond is consumed by jealousy. He tries to impress the girl with incredibly boring adult political proposals, but is ignored by the astronomical cacophony, proving that his father's infinite mattress money can't buy the attention of a child with lethal ADHD. Waking up with a massive moral hangover, the fake mother decides she needs to find flaws in her husband to pretend she has a marriage as normal as possible. The spy himself falls into a neurotic spiral, thinking she's dissatisfied with the family's monotonous routine, and the two begin an embarrassing theater of vague complaints right as the paranoid brother-in-law bursts through the door. Hearing the shouting about dissatisfaction, the secret police nutjob immediately demands a divorce, but bites his tongue when his sister tells him to mind his own useless business. An emergency call rescues Lloyd from this domestic hell, but the brother-in-law smells betrayal in every dust particle and decides to tail him, dragging the assassin along to see if she can find a real reason to complain about her fake marital life. Fortunately, the state security service calls Yuri into work and Yuri gives up on her useless investigation, which is fascinating considering Lloyd isn't cheating on anyone, just running to prevent the collapse of the modern world like a pack mule. The real disaster unfolds when we discover a wretched traitor named Winston Wheeler has stolen ultra-secret Western intelligence files and fled like a rat. The secret police take the bait and mobilize their squad to ensure no unnecessary unnecessary international conflict erupts while Lloyd focuses his sights purely on saving his main operation. In a deadly game of cat and mouse through the streets, the fugitive schedules a meeting in the park, mentioning the perfect color of a tie pin that no one should know about. This leads Yuri's leadership to realize one of their own men leaked tactical info from the inside. With betrayal piercing their chests, the squad instantly deduces the man in front of them isn't an ally, but Twilight himself, looking dapper and ready to rub his genius in their faces. Completely oblivious to this deadly tactical pandemonium, the pink brat enjoys a trip to the zoo, where she ends up in an ironic cage that represents the predatory and perverse nature of humanity. To drive home the fact that the zoo only showcases truth, Anya's rich friend threatens to blow the whole place up by calling in her father's tanks over a simple sign, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the animals are perfectly correct in their philosophies regarding our rotten species. With his Winston Wheeler disguise melting faster than Yuri's dignity, our blonde spy enters terrorist mode, blowing up the park fountain and throwing the state security agents into a festival of deadly traps pulled straight from a child's survival manual. To lose the scum, Lloyd adopts the face of his own neurotic brother-in-law and dives into the city sewers, unaware that the real Yuri has a lunatic's nose for footprints and decides to follow his own trail into the filthy pipes. The reunion in the dark tunnels becomes a bizarre mirror from hell, where two versions of the same person with a sister complex trade elite gunfire until Lloyd takes an extra hole in his arm. Even while bleeding out, our protagonist puts his brother-in-law down with a massive piece of pipe, but his soft heart collapses when the secret police boy starts sweetly moaning Yor's name in a concussive delirium. Lloyd retreats and spares the brat's life, proving that this marriage theater is causing irreversible damage to his judgment. Meanwhile, on the surface, Fiona tries to snag the real Winston Wheeler with a shoddy disguise and a decoy agent, but the traitor has more operational brain cells than usual and bolts for the underground. After tossing an injured hostage in Fiona's face and punching a knife into her gun barrel, the bastard claims victory too early. What he would never suspect is that the platinum agent operates on the infinite fuel of pure repressed lust, focused entirely on licking Twilight's wounds. Lloyd, bleeding and still wearing his wife's brother's face, bumps into Wheeler and gets beaten like a sack of potatoes. Before the turncoat can expose his true identity, Fiona emerges from the shadows, frothing with rage. Witnessing her dream boss being crushed activates the white brat's worst predatory instincts. Miles away, Yuri wakes from his temporary coma and tries to grab the first female co-worker he sees, thinking it's his beloved big sis, only to receive a humiliating slap to restart his brain, while true brutality is about to stain the sewers red. With her brain completely drowned in blind fury and psychotic platonic love, Fiona simply switches off her neural limiters and turns her own body into a suicidal meat grinder. She dislocates her shoulder, shatters her entire leg in a completely unbalanced flying kick, and finishes Winston Wheeler by whipping her own limp limb into his face, dropping the traitor onto the concrete for the mere chance of impressing her injured partner.
But her arm's dislocated!
When Lloyd wakes from his forced nap and secures the package, the girl internally freaks out, thinking he heard her wet confession of feelings, but the spy is so clinically insensitive he thinks she's just outraged by the pathetic quality of his work. After Lloyd confesses he only let Yuri live to keep his marriage contract intact, driving an invisible stake through his jealous colleague's heart, the wise agents pile up the merchandise and vanish with the valuable Western intelligence secured. Rejecting any celebration, the fake family man drags himself back home, expecting to be guillotined by his wife's accumulated complaints. As the universe loves a sadistic irony, Yor greets him with a warm smile, confessing she invented all the marital friction just to fit in with the feudal gossips at the office. The brutal relief nearly shuts down Lloyd's internal organs. He collapses on the floor and delegates all the housework to the assassin's blood-stained hands. The problem is that peace is an alien concept to this guy. The possessive brother-in-law storms into the living room with blood in his eyes, hunting for any hole in Lloyd's arm. Using the peak of his clueless husband acting, the spy hides the injury perfectly and watches Yor eject her own brother from the house with a well-placed kick. Believing he's finally going to sleep, Lloyd smells burning flesh and catches his wife burning massive holes in his shirt with a red-hot iron. Accepting his miserable fate, he hits the floorboards for the third time that day. Far away, Fiona tries to patch up her wrecked body while enduring idiotic jabs at the hospital, receiving a moral lecture from her disguised boss about the absurd dangers of breaking bones over a man. Meanwhile, the Forger house becomes a total asylum, with Anya forcing the psychic dog to imitate a lame capybara and stuffing Frankie's rat's nest of hair with brushes until they all fall asleep in a pile on the sofa so the government slave can go back to processing paperwork in the dead of night.